One of the things that people often tell me when they make Aliyah is that they want to keep their various minhagim that they had in Chutz La'aretz. And one of the things I say is, one of the minhagim of Chutz La'aretz, it says minhag avosenu b'yadenu, is Yom Tov Sheni. So if you want to keep all your minhagim from Chutz La'aretz, you can also keep Yom Tov Sheni along with it. But there are significant differences between Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael, not only for Pesach, but for other things as well. And I'm going to talk about a couple things that have to do not with Pesach, and then many more things that do have to do with Pesach. One of them, which there's a machlokas among Israeli poskim whether it's mutter at all, is in America most people make tea using a kli shlishi, right? Now this was it's a major debate going back hundreds of years among poskim. One of the things that's interesting, by the way, is the Baal HaTanya says you can't for something that's kali bishul, something that's easily cooked like tea leaves, right? But the minhag of Chabad is to do it. There are a series of things where the Baal HaTanya were one thing, but Chabad conducts itself in a different way today. But Reb Moshe was one of the poskim, after a 300-year line of discussion on this, who said Kli Shlishi was mutter, and Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said it was aser. He said the way you have to make tea is making sense. Now, Rav Rimon has said publicly now that people can rely on Reb Moshe in Eretz Yisrael. In the Shmir Shabbos, it's not even brought as a secondary opinion. He only brings the opinion, but Israelis don't do it. So I tell people, if you want to keep the minhag of using a kli shlishi, you can do so, but you should be aware if you have Israelis as guests that they won't drink the tea, or they will be very uncomfortable drinking the tea. So if you're having them as guests, you should make some sense to give them tea from, although, it's only some immigrants that have this minhag, whereas the vast majority, certainly Israelis, don't, and the vast majority of people that learn stop doing it. There's another issue in this neighborhood specifically, but not every place in Eretz Yisrael, having to do with garbage on Shabbos. What do I mean? So in large buildings in Manhattan where you have the garbage chute, they all have these massive trash compactors, right? And once they're a certain volume full, they compact the trash. So in New York, the poskim say it's mutter to do it because it's not a pesik ratio, it's not immediate, that it's not clear that this will happen, and you don't intend it to happen, and the vast majority of the people are non-Jews. So even if later it's most likely the non-Jew is going to throw in the garbage that triggers it. However, here, all the tenants in the building, the people that live in the building are Jews. So you're causing a Jew to do it sooner, which is a problem. So you have to make sure you throw all your garbage away Erev Shabbos, right? And then throw away again Motzi Shabbos.
Yes, with practical questions, because
Yes.
this year I was told that ideally you have your suit on Shabbos out of Pesach, use pita roll, whatever.
Yeah.
If you don't finish it, throw it down the chute. So you got the Pesach issue of Shabbos this year.
Flush it down the toilet.
Okay.
That flushing it down the toilet will work. The other thing I was going to say is, in the Gush, they post when the last garbage pickup each place is, right? And they're usually like 20 minutes behind that. But, you have to have it in the garbage by that point because the garbage bins in this country are owned by Jews, whereas in Chutz La'aretz they're owned by non-Jews. So we have a concern, right? You put it in there, it's still under Jewish control, and if it's still edible, that's a problem. And if it's not edible, it's not chametz anyway. What?
This is regarding chametz.
Right, regarding chametz. So you have to know when the last pickup is to be able to throw things down the chute or whatever. Whereas in Chutz La'aretz, I mean, if you have a house where you have your own private garbage can, it would be a problem also, but other than that, not. So that's another difference between what we have and what they have in Chutz La'aretz. I'm not going to talk about all the possible differences between the Minhagim of Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. It would take many, many shirim. I just wanted to, those are important ones that come up all the time. Maror, we have a list of 5 things in the Mishnah that are maror. The first one is romaine lettuce, which is the preferred thing. And it says you can use the stalks and the leaf, but you can't use the root. All right? Horseradish, which is commonly used Chutz La'aretz, is because the Gemara says if you can't get one of these things, you can use anything that's bitter. Well, lettuce doesn't grow in northeastern Europe, right, before Pesach. And you can't preserve it. And something that's pickled, you can't use for maror either. So the bitter thing that they had that could be saved was horseradish. So that's how it became minhag. In Eretz Yisrael, there's no minhag at all to use horseradish. Everything is romaine lettuce or the other type of lettuces that are acceptable.
Are you yotzei on it if you use it, or?
That's, since it's not one of the things listed in the Mishnah, it's a real problem. Because why did we have the other things? We had the other thing, we had horseradish because we didn't have these. Here you have it. It's not a problem. So it would be difficult to say you're then yotzi using the thing that we only use because we didn't have any of the real things. Mm-hmm. Right? It's also much more pleasant eating romaine lettuce than
you can wrap it, you have desire.
I want to say
but it grows hair in your chest.
I want to say something about the shirim for Pesach. The Gemara says that Beis Habliya machzik shnei zaysim, that you can swallow, the maximum a person can swallow is 2 zaysim at one time. So half of your maximum swallowing capacity, which I assume is, when you swallow that much at a time, you choke a little bit, right? But half of that amount is a kazais. All right? That's what the Aruch HaShulchan says, halacha l'maisa and so on. This is before, of course, they had these funny things.
So you don't need to have a full Caesar salad for your maror?
No. Maror is a little bit harder because it's easiest to use just the stalks and not the leaves, by the way, because it's easier to get the quantity right. But if you're using just the stalks, it's 3 to 5 stalks, depending upon the size and so on.
Okay, so it's a small salad.
Yeah, I mean, but and according to Rav Hirsch, a kazais of matzah was a piece of matzah that covers the palm of your hand. All right. I think our matzahs are probably thinner than the ones he had, so it's probably a little bit more for us, but that's perfectly reasonable.
His wasn't the tefah thick one, right?
The Mishnah Berurah says, the Gemara says you can buy matzah that's a tefah thick. The Mishnah Berurah says, and also I think it's in the Kaf HaChaim as well, that you're not supposed to our minhag is not to make it thicker than an etzba. But still, that's, close to half an inch, a third, right?
Ours is just slightly larger than the width of a piece of paper.
Yeah, I understand.
So if it's much thinner, I assume because we're dealing with a volume, you would need a significantly larger.
Yeah, but even if you want to say, in Germany in Rav Hirsch's time, they already were using machine matzahs.
Got it.
All right. So
you're already talking.
It wasn't as thin as our machine matzahs. I don't think their machinery was as good from the things I've read about it, but it wasn't,
Yeah.
ridiculously thick either. So that's one thing on the shearing. People should not eat so much that they cannot enjoy their Suda. I know that's heresy, what I just said. The minhag in Eretz Yisrael, as recorded by people like Rosh Shmuel Salant, who was the Rav of Yerushalayim for something like 70 years, is that Ashkenazim only use olive oil. The only thing we use. This minhag has, in the old families in Eretz Yisrael, this minhag has been truly preserved, and many of the other people have adopted this minhag, and there is very good reason for it, besides it not just being the minhag. All other oils, when you extract them, like corn oil or almond oil or walnut oil, smell atrocious. And they have these huge, massive factories to remove the smell. And anyone who has worked in these factories can tell you that there is no way in the world to kosher such a thing. All right? So what they do, I don't know what they do. I mean, it seems to me practically impossible. Now, having said that, they don't really do anything other than remove the smells from oils.
So there's no any of the shemamim, any of the meaning of grains there.
It would be extremely unlikely, except things do happen that workers are known to, walk around with sandwiches and things like that. And you do have a very serious problem of kitnios, because most oils that are produced today are kitnios. So for Ashkenazim, this is more of a problem. Olive oil is a natural oil. You press it, and you have a good tasting, smelling oil. I understand it has a strong smell, but it's not disgusting in its natural form. So that is one of the common things, since we're talking about kitnios, is that over 60% of the population of Israel are Sephardim. So, and there are a gazillion products that the only shaila with them to begin with for Pesach would be kitnios, right? You have whole factories where there's never any chametz in them, right? But they use kitnios, and they just get hashgacha for Pesach for la'ochle kitnios bilvad. So this can be a problem. Some things you just can't find in a place like Netanya that aren't like margarine. Finding kosher lePesach margarine for Ashkenazim in Netanya is impossible. Osherad doesn't have it. All right. If you happen to be in Yerushalayim, it's all over the place, right? Mm-hmm. You go to the Osherad in Beit Shemesh, it's there. So if you really want to go to a place where you're going to have a wide variety of things that do not include kitnios, Netanya isn't the place to look for it.
Yes.
Although some of the things that say la'ochle kitnios bilvad, I don't think are. Meaning a lot of the Sephardi hashgachas, they just throw it on everything because, whatever. But so many things don't actually have kitnios on it, and kalim with kitnios aren't a problem, right?
It's not chametz.
It's not chametz. So there's a minhag that some people have. This is a debate among the Achronim, whether if you've cooked kitnios in your pots, the Mishnah Berurah talks about you being allowed to do this to feed your birds and so on. Yes, he doesn't say that you have to wait 24 hours, but many poskim say you should wait 24 hours before you cook your things. But if it's before Pesach, normally we say chametz on Pesach isn't batal, but chametz before Pesach is batal. So the kitnios
is a
vadai. So, if you're talking about only a kalim shaila before Pesach, it really shouldn't be a problem. So if you could actually read the ingredients on something like this, right? and see, I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, especially since I'm going to put it on the net, and you can see whether there's any kitnios in this product or not, right? And as long as you buy it before Pesach, it's not a problem. The other thing is, I just said that chametz before Pesach is batal. And so you see on many products that it's written Erev Pesach.
Erev Pesach.
And that means even on Chol Hamoed, you can buy it and you know it was produced before Pesach. So if there was any chametz in it, it was batal already. Whereas they stop the stuff that they produce during Pesach.
With milk and
Right.
and with eggs, that's all same.
Right, exactly. The Gedolim in Eretz Yisrael are much more machmir on finishing the Suda by Chatzos Halayla than they are in Chutz La'aretz. All right? So that's one thing that's certainly true. And I want to talk about Hechsher Kalim because people...
So you're finishing the Suda including the Afikomen?
Yeah. I remember Rav Druckmann Suda was half an hour. Suda is very quick. No, basically, no talking during the Suda because you're eating. And koshering for Pesach is one of those things that it's been recommended ever since the world became wealthier. And everyone agrees this. If you can, you have both the space and the financial wherewithal, it's better to have everything, Pesach Kalim for everything and not kasher anything. Having said that, it can be either a space issue or it can be a monetary issue, being able to afford it. So, or some things you just, you can't get another one for one way or one reason or another, whatever it is, that's fine. But there are other things that we have to kasher, like our counters, right?
Yes.
And counters in the United States are made out of very different things they're made out of here. In the United States, even, quote, the quartz counters and stuff like that aren't actual stone. Most people don't know this. They're ground up stone that's put together with a type of an epoxy. And the colors they're using different colors and stuff like that, with the exception of pure marble. Other than that, it's this artificial stuff. Whether that can be kashered or not, most people say yes simply because they don't know that it's this epoxy that's holding it together. It's quite reasonable to say, even so, because nothing can penetrate that stuff, that you can kasher it by Hagala. All right? Pouring from boiling water on it. The minhag in Eretz Yisrael is to use an Evan Meluban, a hot stone. Now, I will tell you a much easier way, and if you only use an iron for kashering for Pesach, it's worth owning it for this. If you heat up an iron, you need very, very little water. Pour it out of your kumkum, right? And go over it with the iron, and it brings it back to boiling. When
you say go over it with iron, actually
pour the water on the
and then you put the
iron
onto the surface.
Yeah, and just go over it like that. And it brings the water back to a boil. Now, in general, we say you have to determine how to kasher a kli by rov tashmisha, the majority of how it's used. And in general, we don't put things on a countertop that are solid food that's hot out of a kli rishon.
Correct.
Right? We usually keep things in kli. However, sometimes things splash out. Anyone who says they've never had something fall out of their pot onto their countertop, right, either never has cooked or isn't watching what they're doing. One of the two. There are Rishonim that say that we paskin by yut tashmisha, by the minority use, whatever small percentage it is, we still have to be concerned for it. And on Pesach, we're machmir for all sorts of things that we're not generally machmir for. So therefore, the minhag in Eretz Yisrael, going back at least 400 years, is to kasher with an even meluban. It has advantages because, as I said, you have to use much, much less water. All right? It might take a little longer because the iron will take some time to recover. It will cool down and stop bringing the water back up to boiling, so you have to wait a little bit. But you don't end up with a flooded kitchen.
Yes.
And that's worth a lot. I'm just saying, that's worth a lot. So that, for me, is a very important thing. The other thing that can be important is our countertop range tops are not attached in any way. In the States, they're attached to the countertop. We have various adhesives that glue them down, and God help you if you try and get them off, right? Here, they're just, gravity is the only thing holding them in place, which means chametz can get under there. And when you pull them up, you will see a significant amount of
Schmuck.
really disgusting schmutz under there. So I think it's necessary on Pesach to raise them up and clean them. It usually isn't hard because it's usually pretty soft, meaning it takes like 10 minutes to do. And it's certainly even if it weren't Pesach, it would be worth doing at least once a year.
For sanitation sake.
Yeah.
Cleanliness aside, if that's inedible, what that stuff is that considered chametz in a sense? Just pure halacha?
Pure halacha, no.
Right.
It's clearly, batal mi achilas kelev and so on. Having said that, we are I would say it is almost certainly true that at some point in time, some of that stuff was chametz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And our minhag is to get rid of all of such stuff. It also can have an effect on kashering, meaning if there's something that's there, so the water couldn't get there, it's a problem. So, cleaning it out is a very good idea. That's a key. That's very important. Most sinks in this country are stainless steel. Again, just pouring boiling water on them takes care of them. Plastic, the American poskim, the vast majority of them say you can't kasher plastic. And all the Israeli poskim say you can kasher plastic by hagala. This would include things like silicon and so on, right? Just pouring boiling water on them. The difficult thing is these new non-stick surfaces would clear, if they're in a frying pan or something like that, you would need libun on them. The problem is that libun will destroy the surface, right? So you can't do that.
Well, what was that again?
For a frying pan, a Teflon frying pan, right, would require libun, making it glow red hot. If you make a Teflon pan grow red hot,
It's done.
it's done. So,
So it's not kosherable.
it's not kosherable, just accept that. Whereas if you're talking about a large soup pot, right, that's with hagala, with boiling water, and that would be possible because, the Teflon is just fine with boiling water. There are so many of these nonstick surfaces now, but they're all a new type of stuff, so,
So those non-stick surfaces are not kosherable by Hagala.
Well, it depends. If it's the type of pan that you use without a liquid in it, right? A frying pan, then they can't use hagala. If they're a saucepan or a soup pot or something like that, where you don't fry something in it, right? Oil isn't a medium that we would consider,
Got it.
that doesn't matter. But if things that we generally have sauces in, a liquid medium so it doesn't get so hot, right? Then you can kasher them with hagala. I'm saying it, so it depends on what it is. I mean, if you have one of the cast iron frying pans, you can kasher it with hagala. That's with libun. Excuse me. You can kasher it with libun. That's not a problem. In Eretz Yisrael, they are slightly more lenient with the temperature required for libun gamer than they are in Chutz La'aretz. The poskim in Eretz Yisrael say if you set your oven to 200 degrees Celsius, right, that is libun gamer. So you run it up to 200 degrees Celsius and leave it on for some period of time. That not only kashers your oven, it will kasher whatever inside it. So if you have, again, stick frying pans, I guess is the right phrase, like an old cast iron frying pan or aluminum or whatever it is, put it in, that would work for kashering it. There is a difference between libun and hagala, in that if you're doing hagala, the pot cannot have been used for 24 hours. When you're kashering by boiling water, the thing that you're kashering can't have been used in the last 24 hours. So this applies to your countertops, or I should say they can't have been used to anything warm or hot, right? You can still use them cold. Whereas if you're doing libun, we don't care. The reason is because when we do hagala, it works by removing the isser. The boiling water pulls the isser out of the kli, out of the thing I'm kashering. With libun, it burns it up. Since it burns it up, if you're doing libun,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter how long ago it received the tam, right?
It's gone.
It's gone. It's burnt.
Now.
Years ago, ULA, Yeshiva University of Los Angeles, had these ridiculously heavy mechitzas that were supposed to imitate stained glass with these metal things around them. And one of them was broken and had to be re-welded. And I brought in a welding equipment to do it. And I fixed it one morning outside the Beis Medrash. And, I made sure the kids were standing far, far away because, you can blind yourself looking at that stuff. And so they're watching me, and I finished. The metal is cherry red. It's really hot. And after like a minute, it cools down and it's not cherry red anymore. And one of the boys goes, "Oh, it's cool. Can I touch it now?" And I say, "Well, iron becomes cherry red at about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So right now, it's probably 490 degrees Fahrenheit." One of the issues is a safety issue with heat. When we do libun, Chazal felt people are cognizant enough of the massive heat involved with doing libun, and the fact is that you can damage things if you have them that hot and throw them into cold water, right? So we don't require that you do anything. We assume people are competent enough to stay away from it for a period of time. Good.
And so when we're using the iron on our countertops, that's libun.
No.
That's still
That's hagala. I'm bringing the water back to boiling.
Got it.
When we do hagala, there's no halacha this way, but it's the advice found, for thousands of years, that we have to dip the thing in a cold water afterwards to cool it down so someone doesn't grab it accidentally and burn themselves. And when you dip into the water, sometimes the water will cool down, right? So if the water is no longer boiling, that means the bubbles are forming in it, right? You have to wait until it heats up again. So that what you're putting in there gets hot. It gets, close to 200 degrees sitting in there, even for a relatively short period of time, right? So it's hot and people can be burned by it, right? Not realize that, it gets that hot. So we dip it in cold water afterwards so it can be handled safely. With countertops, you can, the fact is by the time you're done, what you started it with will already be cool. So I don't really feel there's a need, except maybe where you finish it off.
So previously I always was told one continuous pour, but now that I'm using an iron instead, is there still a need for that one continuous pour?
No.
Whatever your iron touches, it's dough.
Right. When you do Hagala, often you dip one side in and then you turn it over and dip the other side of the pot in.
Yeah.
You can kasher half at a time. That's not.
Got it.
And sometimes there's no other way to do something. Right? You couldn't dip your whole counter in simultaneously.
You're right.
Right? It's not going to happen. You can try, but
you get 40 gallons of boiling hot water, you just pour.
I know someone that does that, and their kitchen is flooded.
Yes.
When they're done.
That's how it's always been for me.
The downstairs neighbor's not very happy.
What?
The downstairs neighbor's not very happy.
Yeah, there are all sorts of things. Things that are only used cold, right? Is
like
just rinsing out. Yeah, there is a minhag to do hagala on Kiddush cups because people often, especially Hasidim, would put whiskey in them, which is chametz.
I've never
and viewed as sharp. Yeah, I have never wanted anything in my Kiddush cups other than wine either. But there are those that have that minhag. I would say if anyone has people around, not only themselves, but other people that do that, then it's good to do hagala. If not, then it's perfectly okay to
not bother koshering it.
Well, you have to kosher it. Koshering something that's never been hot is cleaning it in cold water after it's clean.
Yeah.
And that's it. Kiddush cups are relatively easy to kosher. Glass is different. Glass we have chumras on for all sorts of reasons. Machlokas, it's a three-way machlokas in the Tosefta as to the nature of glass. One opinion is it never absorbs anything, and therefore nothing can flow out of it. One opinion is it absorbs, and once it absorbs it, you can never get that tam out of it no matter what you do, so it can't be kashered. And the third opinion is missing me right now. But the minhag of Sfardim is paskin by the Beis Yosef is that glass doesn't have to be kashered; it just has to be washed out, because he holds it never absorbs anything. The Ramah says concerning Pesach that we don't kasher glass. Our minhag is not to kasher glass because of the third opinion, which is the second one that I quoted in the Tosefta, that it absorbs, but it never finishes to get rid of that taste. Having said that, if the glasses have only been used cold, like glasses that you drink out of, they are kashered by soaking in water for 72 hours, changing the water after each 24-hour segment. All right? Or you can just get other glasses. Or you can, use disposable cups for 8 days or whatever. It's not such a huge problem for us today. It used to be, right? These things were very, very tricky. A stovetop is problematic because it gets very hot and stuff gets spilled on it. Again, anyone who says they've never spilled any chametz on their stovetop.
Really?
Never used it.
Never used it. Or is very, very unobservant. There is an extremely easy way to kasher them with a blech. because you don't normally put food on it, right? And the food that's directly on it, you just throw away. You never take that to eat it. At least no normal person that I know does. If you put a blech over the stovetop and you turn all the burners on high and you put a match on top of it, when the match flames, the stovetop is kashered.
So when you're
I will
talking about
tell-
the
let me-
specifically talking about burners.
Burners, right.
Not the glass between.
No. But that would be kashered with it anyway, because like we say pottery can't be normally kashered unless you return it to a kiln. It gets so hot it just burns up anything. It would be the same thing with glass, I would assume. The reason why this works is because it needs libun kal, which is not getting to the heat where the metal starts to glow, but it's getting to the point at heat where I heat one side and the other side is hot enough for a piece of dry straw to flame. All right? Dry straw and a safety match flame at about the same temperature. So if you do this, don't go away because it kashers very quickly. It's never taken me 5 minutes. All right? And it produces massive amounts of heat. And I usually do it at night just before I go to bed. Because in the States, when I had a stovetop, it would stay hot for hours afterwards. And, it's just stay away from the thing. But it does kashers it quickly. And then the racks that hold the pots are also completely kashered as well. And even though we do have a minhag to cover them, even if they're kashered, you really don't have to worry about it because this method actually kashers them. Whereas there are many, unless you have a torch, otherwise you're incapable of kashering them. And then wrapping them with foil, the foil always breaks and tears and this and that. It's a pain in the neck. I used to tell people in the United States, go get a piece of sheet metal to use as a blech, even if you never use a blech.
Cookie sheets work?
Cookie sheets will work as well. They may be bent. The heat is so intense that often bends the thing. But yes, you can go out, buy a cookie sheet and use that. You can kasher half at a time, depending on the size of your cookie sheet. And that's all fine, and it will work. And as I assume the same thing is true here. It's worthwhile to buy the cookie sheet or the piece of sheet metal or whatever it is, just to do that once a year and not have to worry about the foil tearing and redoing it. I remember before I figured this out, I was, the foil tears, so then you have to rewrap it. The foil tears again. You have to. It drove me crazy. And when I came up with this, I told it to several gedolim, and they all agreed it was kosher. They all agreed it worked. So I am very happy with this method. And even according to the most machmir shitas, it does work. And it makes your Pesach relatively easy. Refrigerators have to be cleaned out. And the minhag is to put down some paper, like parchment paper or something like that. Because, it's a little bit hard. Sometimes stuff gets stuck in there that you have, problems getting out or something. What?
Foreign concept.
What?
That there would be actually dirt in your refrigerator.
You never had anything spill in your refrigerator?
I have, but I'm only half yucky. My mother never had anything spill in her refrigerator. Or if it didn't last for more than about 3 seconds.
Those are the major things I think about kashering and about Pesach that are useful to know here. Of course, there are a zillion other things, but I'm concentrating on the things that are different or relatively unknown. Are there any questions about this stuff?
I think we're fortunate we have it easy as far as having Pesach, Society Pesach Kalim and